everyone, and thanks for joining. I'm Trent Lanning, Product Marketing Manager here at Comply, and today we'll be discussing key compliance calendar priorities for the year ahead. Before we jump into the session, an important note for IACCP designees. Today's presentation qualifies for one general IACCP continuing education credit. IACCP designees who would like to receive CE credit should attach the "Thank you for attending" email that will be sent tomorrow to a new continuing education activity in the IACCP Resource Center portal. Your attendance will be verified. CE certificate will be emailed in 4 to 5 weeks. Now today, I'm joined by Kia Seymour and Kate Clark. Kia and Kate, would you like to introduce yourselves?
Hello, my name is Kia Seymour. I'm an associate compliance consultant here at Comply. I'm really excited to be speaking with you guys today.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kate Clark. I'm the legal content writer here at Comply. So I'm on the product team and help update our policies and procedures and our products anytime there's a regulatory rule change. So really happy to be here and discuss the key compliance activities that need to be on your calendar.
Awesome. Thank you both. So, little preview of how today's agenda is going to go. So, key areas include insight into manuals, filings, navigating the marketing rule, mitigating risk associated with material non-public information, and we'll finish up with a segment on record keeping. So, jumping right in to manuals, Kia, would you like to take it away?
Yes, I would. So here we have maintaining your manuals. So with maintaining your manuals, you're going to hear this repeatedly, that your manuals are a living, breathing document. So here we have some quotes from the 2026 exam priorities, and we really want to hammer in that your policies and procedures, they must be tailored to your firm and how it actually operates. Your regulators are going to expect the manuals to reflect current practices, and your annual reviews are required to be updated, but also with your manuals, these things should be updated more frequently than your annual review. That living, breathing document aspect will reflect within your policies and procedures. So inadequate manuals are often cited as a root cause for violation. So that's why that's going to be a key focus with the 2026 exam priorities.
Awesome. Thank you, Kia. And we're mentioning that. We're going to jump into the first poll question, folks. Go ahead and answer it in the chat. Um, Kia, Kate, while folks are answering, could we speak to the importance of, you alluded to it, Kia, maybe not just annual, like, do you have best practices for how often folks should be updating policies? Like, what is your take here?
Yes, so it's not a matter of just once a quarter or an actual standard amount of how many times you should. It should reflect within your compliance meetings. Has there been issues that arose? Has there been new amendments? Has there been reflections within your own employees that show that, hey, I need to update these policies and procedures to be even more specific? So it's really going to be catered to the specific firm and how you guys operate. Kate, do you have any intake on that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, your policies and procedures, that's where you say what you do, and your practice is where you do what you say. So those should really be feeding off of each other. And I just want to point out that in the past 5 years, we have had a ton of regulatory changes. So I really hope that people are updating them more frequently than over 5 years ago or within the last 5 years. I mean, since late 2020, we've had the marketing rule, Regulation SP. We had temporarily the AML rule for investment advisors, which was then, pushed out in terms of the compliance state, Form PF amendments. So you, again, really do need to be, checking into the rules, see what applies to you. And as Kia said, just constantly be making sure that your manual does reflect your actual business practices and the risks that you have at your firm.
Awesome. Appreciate that. And thanks for everyone for participating in that poll. Um, Jumping in, staying on the topic of manuals, I think this is a really important one to address is AI. Um, are you accounting for how you're using AI? What does that look like in your manuals? Kia, Kate, you want to chime in here on this one?
Absolutely. So regulators are expecting firms to document how AI is being used. AI is still relatively new and it needs controls on how you're using it, how it's allowed to be used. Is it to use in a framework of an email, or are you actually allowing your employees to get information? There's a lot of risk with AI. There's a lot of biases, hallucinations, and data integrity. And I just want to speak on what an AI hallucination is. So, an AI hallucination is when a large language model or generative AI produces a confident, plausible sounding, but ultimately false, nonsensical, or even fabricated information, such as fake facts, non existent sources, or incorrect codes, because it's predicting statistically. It's like a word pattern and it's gathering all this information from all these various sources and it could just be false. So you definitely want to address AI and how you're allowing it to be used. There should be some restrictions. There should be some supervisory controls. Actually list out which AI products that you're allowing to use. Are you going to allow your company to use ChatGPT or Claude? So it should be very specific.
Yep. And I absolutely agree with what you said earlier, Kia. You really do need to know how you're using AI within the firm. There's a very big difference between maybe the customer relations team or marketing using AI to, help draft emails or come up with ideas for marketing versus using like AI powered tools to actually make those like investment advisory decisions. So there's a really broad spectrum of ways that AI could be used, and you need to document what is appropriate and is not appropriate, and make sure everybody understands what those where they fall in that spectrum.
Definitely makes sense. And I mean, we're hearing straight from the regulators, right, Kate? Like the
Mhm.
SEC in its recent exam priorities lasered right in on AI. What was your reaction to that new inclusion of the language in the recent exam priorities?
Well, they are making it very clear, again, that you need to have a handle on AI. Not necessarily that you need to be the one back there coding and knowing every single aspect of it, but you really need to know if it's in your tools. How are your tools using it? Are there like other data privacy concerns? Are you like providing confidential information to these like large language models that then are just putting it out there into the ether, and you have no control over where that information is going. So while you don't need to be an expert on AI generally, you need to know exactly how it affects your firm and your clients.
Definitely. And I mean, we also saw FINRA just
Mhm.
recently in their annual regulatory oversight report. I mean, they actually, provided some guidance here, right? Did you want to quickly touch on how they were approaching AI?
Yeah, sure. So again, you need to really know the risks associated with AI and again, come up with different ways to mitigate those risks and how they affect your firm. Again, like it could become like a pervasive industry issue if people really aren't familiar, but right now you need to worry about your firm and your clients and how AI interacts, with them. Again, Kia mentioned earlier, hallucinations are potentially a horrible problem that we could be dealing with. You need to trust AI somewhat, but again, you need to verify that the information that it's producing is accurate. And like any other tool, you can't go in with 100% trust. Like trust has to be earned, and you do that through, constantly monitoring and verifying that information is accurate and applicable to you, your firm, your clients.
Oh, makes sense. Appreciate the insight there. Wrapping up this first section, I mean, kind of just packaging up the best practices in one place. Kia, do you wanna close this one out?
Absolutely. So, with managing your manuals, you do want to subscribe to regulatory updates. You want to stay ahead of the rule changes, and this will allow you to build adequate time for thoughtful policies and revisions. And I want to hammer this also. It's not just enough to have written policies and procedures, these elements within should be tested. Testing the controls within your manuals allows the firms to practice your fiduciary duty and see what needs adjustments. Like I said, these are living, breathing documents. And with that said, always incorporating training when policies are updated, giving your employees time to read their new manual adjustments and updates, and actually giving them training to reinforce those what they just learned. This is and what compliance leaders can actually do is incorporating all these elements. Team specific trainings are vital.
Awesome. And we're jumping forward. So filings. This is a fun one. Kate, you want to take us away here?
Yeah, sure. So frequent filings. We all know that filings are a very important and essential part of the compliance function. You may want to, but you cannot escape them. So let's not turn them into stumbling blocks. There's two examples here on the screen that just kind of show that you know, even though there may be very specific dates that you need to have things filed by, some firms may struggle with that. Um, there are some common filing deficiencies, which include inaccurate disclosures, failing to make amendments to Form ADV, and then failing to make form filings on time. So as we move to the next slide, we'll kind of tackle some ways that we can address that. So this is sort of how you find your rhythm with filings. When it comes to getting your disclosures right, we find that there are like three key steps. The first one would be sort of to gather all of the necessary information after you've read all of the instructions and the relevant rules, and you've assigned clear roles for like data collection, drafting, certain narratives that may be associated with the filing, reviewing has been drafted, and then making that filing. So to break that down even further, we always suggest well ahead of any sort of deadline that you know gather your key stakeholders, work through the rule, and again read the instructions. There's great information there that will probably answer your questions many of the time. So then sort of determine, you know, who's in charge of what. Give yourself plenty of time to review the work that others may have produced. They may have forgotten something or missed the mark in some way, and you don't want that that time to be ticking, and you're scrambling around like a crazy person, just trying to get some facts that you know are somewhere within your firm and distilling them down into a filing. In terms of the ADV amendments, we all know that needs to be filed within 90 days of the end of your firm's fiscal year. That date doesn't really change, so that should be on your calendar with plenty of time. It's a pretty hefty document with tons of information that you will need to fill out. So you need to make sure that that annual date is on your calendar. But again, there's other times when you may need to revisit your Form ADV. A few examples on the screen: when you're growing your assets under management, you're adding or removing advisors, taking on a new type of client. a good rule of thumb is anytime there is something happening at your firm that your clients would want to know about, or that would be material for them wanting to hire you for the first time. So, if it's information that like a potential new client would find important, maybe that you want to be revisiting your Form ADV and see if there's anything that, needs to be addressed at that time. Um, and to round it out in terms of timely filings, yeah, you need to know and track all of your deadlines. There are certain like trigger events that you may be able to anticipate. If you notice that your firm is growing like crazy, maybe you're about to become a large trader, and then you need to file the filings associated with that for the first time. Again, you can stay on top of that just by really being connected with everyone within your firm, have those key individuals understand what the trigger is, so that way you are not missing that deadline and you're all kind of working collaboratively. And in terms of understanding the reporting windows, that really speaks to Regulation SP, which that recently passed. You may already be affected by it. You may be affected by it in June, depending on the size of your firm. But you need to make certain disclosures within 72 hours of a breach. So, you need to be working with IT in the event affected by that. Just everybody needs to know, maybe by department, the timelines that could affect them. So we're not, stumbling on this.
Thank you, Kate. I think the key takeaway here is just being extra proactive
Yes.
is always a good strategy here.
Yes.
Uh, Appreciate it. So we're going to move to marketing. Again, this one we've seen a lot of activity for just recently, even. Kia, you want to take us away here?
Absolutely. So, like you mentioned, recently we have had even highlights of this marketing, which has been a huge focus within our industry. Marketing oversight is a top enforcement priority. So, what can we do to help this? Having documentation that's approved is essential. Your firms must review content before it's disseminated. That'll help you guys in the long run. Having a full system for your marketing will help with this oversight as well. Missing or unclear disclosures and testimonials and endorsements has been a huge focus and a key risk area. Even on December 16th, 2025, the SEC released a risk alert titled Additional Observations Regarding Advisors' Compliance with the Advisors Act Marketing Rule. So if you want to read a little bit further into some of those key risk areas, that's a great piece just to keep you refreshed on what the SEC is currently focused on. And within that, it mostly highlighted the lack of clear and prominent disclosures. So here we have just a few points that the SEC and FINRA are looking at. So those, like I mentioned, unclear disclosures, inadequate oversights of promoters and referral arrangements, generic or incomplete disclosure of compensation and conflicts, improper use of third-party ratings, inadequate supervision for firm social media influencers, following inaccurate information in mobile apps. So all these things, when you do see issues, training, going back to what we said with policies and procedures, how are we going to resolve this? Training, also implementing updates within your policies and procedures when you do see things that are going awry.
Yep. And first of all, I'm going to throw up a poll question for the folks in the audience to answer. As folks are answering that question, really just want to reiterate how many we've seen a number of risk alerts issued by the SEC. Curious, either of you two, working with Comply, what are some of the biggest pain points you've seen? What makes it so difficult to navigate from a high level?
That's a great question. I believe I've seen a vast a range of some issues within marketing. cherry picking, we're going to allude to that in a little bit. Just making sure your marketing's fair and balanced. Disclosures help with a lot of the instances that we previously mentioned, having the clear distinctions of products, and just reading up on that new marketing rule and staying refreshed on the rules that are within that document.
Cool, cool. Appreciate that. And thank you, folks, for answering this next poll question. We're going to jump on to some more best practices, Kia.
Yeah, so best practices within marketing, your firm needs a repeatable review and approval process. Understanding what counts as marketing. Is it your social media, your website, blogs, business card, PowerPoints, Finfluencers? It's all marketing. Having those distinctions within your policies and procedures and having training so everybody knows. Having an approval process. Is it going to the CCO? Is anybody allowed to post on their own social medias, even on your LinkedIn? I don't know how many times I've seen firms have personal LinkedIns and your firm, there's no disclosures on there. So all of it matters. Also, testimonials and endorsements, having those disclosures. Social media introduces supervision challenges. With my firms, I have social media reviews where we go in and look at everyone's social media from Facebook to YouTube to LinkedIn, looking at those disclosures items for those.
Yeah, I mean, this one's big and a big focus, I think, and it will continue to be. So definitely being proactive here, just as we're being proactive with our filings, ensuring that we're documenting everything. Moving forward to material non-public information risks. Kate, you want to take the
Yes.
lead here?
Yes, sure. So, MNPI, just as Trent said, material non-public information. So, what is that? So that's any sort of like confidential information about a certain company that's not available to the public and that can significantly affect a stock price positively or negatively. And again, I'm sure we all know this, but trading on that information is insider trading, which is illegal. And while we may know this, again, there's all these gray areas. So as we move into the next slide, we will kind of address those. On the screen, there's a few examples of the way that MNPI has been used in a very negative way because of, the like frequency at which people now work from home. There may be like of certain like confidentiality. So I know there was a very interesting case a few years ago where a wife may have been working on like a certain merger. Husband was able to overhear information because she was working from home and there were safeguards not put in place. And then he was able to share that information or make trades based on that information, which we all know is not proper and insider trading. So again, if you're going to allow people to work from home, work remotely, work out of the office, there needs to be safeguards put in place. Confidentiality does not end just because you are working from a different location. MNPI remains MNPI until that information is made public. So if we move to the next slide, we'll start to address the ways that we can mitigate these risks. We suggest like 3 strategies. The first one is cross-department collaboration. Even though you're in compliance, you don't have to go it alone. This is a great time to work with IT and see what they're seeing. Make sure that you're implementing access controls, that those who need to know are the only ones who know. Make sure that you're not sharing information, that you're logging any sort of attempts by individuals to access information that they shouldn't be attempting to access. So even if you're a small firm, maybe that's, when you bring in somebody with some IT experience to kind of help you design this. This really is not something that you should be going alone. Yeah, call the experts. You can also leverage data analytics. There's a lot of great information that can be gleaned just from the information used on your firm's networks or the various platforms that you may use. We touched on this a few moments ago, but tracking who's attempting to access information that they should not be, monitoring trades. That's a huge tip off a lot of the time that somebody is indeed accessing MNPI. If somebody's just, hitting home runs in terms of trades, like shortly before information becomes public, that should kind of trigger a red flag. And a lot of the time, you may be able to use AI-powered tools to help kind of flag this information. That is especially helpful when it comes to identifying like unusual trading patterns or things that may be suspicious and out of the norm, certain trades that may need to be investigated. Again, AI is especially helpful when it comes to identifying like shadow trading. That's when you have information about company A and then you make a trade in company B using that information. And, that's a company, in the same field or a competitor. So the SEC has made at least one case based on that sort of shadow trading. So AI tools can definitely help flag something that may not be apparent to just us regular individuals.
Thanks, Kate. And a couple things, following up here. First of all, particularly this middle one, like trade monitoring for those firms that
Mhm.
are growing, maybe that their employee counts are growing and it's becoming more difficult to monitor each individual person. Like, can you speak to maybe the importance of like a good pre-clearance process and potentially maybe even weaving those requirements into their policies and procedures?
Yes, absolutely. So, pre-clearance is definitely one of the better ways to kind of prevent MNPI, especially if you have like a restricted list, which I'm sure most firms do, of companies that you cannot trade on. You need to be making sure that you are indeed not letting trades in that stock uh, to occur. Pre-clearance, yeah, if you're seeing the same people making like very large trades when they normally don't, that can flag something for you, on the back end, and sort of prompt you to do additional investigation. So there are tools that allow you to do that. So you don't have to go it alone.
Definitely. And the next, this final section on the right, which we're about to jump into books and records, record keeping requirements, all that good stuff. But did want to just highlight like there is technology now that will allow us to better like set keywords, set safeguards, because I know one challenge folks see is that maybe they set a requirement to like detect things that say guarantee, right? But then in their disclosure, like they say like our firm does not guarantee XYZ. So like very important in the technology that you have something that can reconcile those two. But jumping into books and records, obviously incredibly important. Kia, you want to take this one?
Absolutely. So, brushing up on books and records, Trent did allude to this being a super important section, and I can't agree more. So, with that, we'll have our Rule 2042. So this requires accurate, complete communication records. So here you see it says the SEC registered investment advisors to make and keep records of written communications relating to their advisory business. These records must be complete, accurate, retained for required periods, and readily accessible for SEC examinations. You're supposed to be keeping your books and records for a matter of 5 years. So with that, there has been a lot of issues related to the upkeep of your off-channel communications, and having that be a major issue year after year shows that you should be learning from the mistakes of others. Having proper books and records can avoid fines. So there have been recently fines of, in the millions in some cases for improper use of off-channel communications. And with learning the mistakes of others, you're not only learning that, to avoid the monetary fine, but also a risk to your integrity of your firm.
Yes, absolutely. And we all know that we need to make and maintain these records. So we should not be stumbling on this, as Kia said.
Yeah, so with retaining your email correspondence and off-channel communications, it goes back to what's in your policies and procedures. Looking at the approved platforms, are you guys allowed to use Teams, for example, to use Zoom? Are you even allowed to use your personal device for text messaging? When I look at these policies and procedures and seeing what's allowed and what's not allowed in terms of approved communications, I'm going back to that books and records rule. How are you archiving these things? Are you able to archive a personal device and allowing text messages? That means now that you're doing business from your cell phone, we have to have those books and records of your private conversations as well for 5 years, and I have to have that full access. So it's easier possibly just to prohibit that type of use. Are you allowing your employees to use off-channel communication such as WhatsApp? Social media is a way that people communicate all the time now. There have to be parameters around that. If you're not able to archive that, it should possibly be prohibited within your policies and procedures. And also having those escalation processes in place. If you're not allowed to use these things and people are still, what's the procedures for that? That's a part of that marketing and a part of that living, breathing document of your policies and procedures to place those escalation processes as well. Firms must capture and review all business communications. So your policies must align with the actual communication that's being practiced. I have a lot of clients that say, hey, I've had a long-term relationship with this client. We're actually friends as well. And we just happen to just bring up a business conversation in our regular everyday conversation. Perfect opportunity to say, hey, can we move this to an on-channel communications? Now that we're talking about business, let's move this conversation to an approved platform so I can archive that. There's ways to mitigate that and have those in your policies and procedures in place in training for your employees to know what's the escalation process when these things do arise. Because you want to be able to retrieve all these communications. We do email reviews, looking at those things so they're able to be accessible in case a regulator comes knocking and they need to retrieve those things.
Definitely appreciate that insight, Kia. I think you've alluded to quite a bit the bit of these best practices, but of course, folks probably know 204-2. There's a number of rules that govern and require really in-depth record keeping. Do you want to touch a little bit on this, even though it seems like you covered most of it?
No, absolutely. And these are things that should be reiterated over and over just to hammer in the importance of books and records. So there are a number of rules within the SEC and FINRA. You'll see SEC 2042, 17A, 17A4, FINRA Rule 4511, FINRA Rule 2210. I think it's really important to go in and deep dive and look at the actual rules. A lot of times within the SEC, we're governed by best practices, but when there are rules, it's important to know what exactly it says. Monitoring rules and the books and records requirements, there are some requirements of 5 years. So making sure that you have that documented. Firms must monitor those updates as well. Regulatory obligations, they're not static. So understanding that and looking at those prohibited channels, clearly documenting any prohibited methods of communications, clearly noting what's acceptable, what's monitored, and what's banned. This is really important even for the people who are doing your email review, your social media review, looking at, hey, we're not even approved to be using things like Gmail. Why is this a thing that you're communicating on? It's paying attention to the little details that end up being big details and could be big risks. And I also alluded to having an escalation process, reporting those violations, assessing the situation, notifying the key stakeholders. Under ADV Part 1, and we're talking about books and records, I just had some of your vendors that you're using. Those are books and records. Those need to be archived for 5 years. I can't count on my hand how many times when I'm reviewing these ADV Part 1 under Section 1L, books and records, you're not disclosing your books and records. Where are you keeping those emails? You have a cloud system that you're using. With the new Reg SP, you have plenty of vendors that you might not have been disclosing. You should be disclosing on your ADV. This is a perfect time right now. We're in January. So January through March 31st, this is your annual updating amendment. It's a great time to review all of your vendors and putting them in your ADV Part 1 so they can be disclosed properly. So keeping your compliance calendar up to date, reflecting those requirements, just keeps you in charge of what these deadlines are, keeping up with your books and records and monitoring. So documenting and archiving is everything. If you've written it down, saying what you're going to do, what Kate alluded to, should be documented and easily accessible. So if you're doing it, why isn't having any documentation so you can pull it up and show, and this is the evidence of what I've been doing?
And on a similar note, if you are the CCO, if you do cooperate with the regulators and you do self-report, we have seen instances where the fines are significantly reduced, sometimes even to zero, when you do self-report. So it may hurt initially, but it is the right thing to do and can save you from significant headaches down the road.
Thank you, Kia and Kate. Really valuable information there. I know a lot of this, like reporting violations, of course, like can't put that on your calendar. You don't know when it's going to happen. However, you bring to like really important facts of, are we updating our policies and procedures? Are we ensuring that the channels we allow are up to date? Are we limiting the use of maybe rising new channels that we hadn't previously thought about blocking our employees from using? So to package all that together and to note that I know there are probably some CCOs in the audience as well. What kind of calendar task might be best for them to put on their calendars? Is it something like just like regular reviews of policies and procedures to ensure, record keeping is up to date? How would you recommend folks actually put that onto their calendar?
I do agree with having regularly email reviews, having that percentage aligned with the intake that you're getting, sometimes 5%, less or more, depending on the intake of the amount of emails that you're getting. I also want to say social media review with the growing social media that you guys presence having that being regularly monitored should be implemented.
Yeah. And again, many of us are either already complying with Regulation SP or are about to be complying with Regulation SP. So I hope you've created perhaps a good relationship with IT as you're working through everything that comes along with Regulation SP. Maybe you want to put in like a monthly like meeting with IT, and that's where you kind of talk about, what trends they're seeing. Are there other like platforms that they know about that maybe you want to work into your policies and procedures? Like, hey, we've heard of this new like social media platform. Do you want us to add that to like a blacklist? Are we going to allow that? We know about various new like terms that we could add to sort of like a monitoring list. Can we make that happen? So I think bringing in like your IT experts, maybe monthly, maybe more frequently, at the beginning and finding the right rhythm for these meetings. I think that would be something great to have on your calendar. Nobody is expecting like you as the CCO or member of the compliance team to, have that deep IT knowledge. So, work with somebody who does and can help, guide you through this.
I love what you said there, Kate, about being knowledgeable and working with others. And I like that we have it highlighted. Train your team, having those trainings. It's not enough just to have an attestation where someone just checks mark and has their signature. You should know what you're reading. You should be obliging by what's in your policies and procedures. It's not enough to say, well, I didn't know that specific vendor, we're not allowed to use that. Well, you signed off on it. You were also trained on that. So I definitely believe that training your team is essential in all these categories.
Yes, absolutely. And yeah, maybe quarterly, you review the various platforms and say, oh, we've analyzed the risk, and we see, that using this certain platform, would not be harmful to us. And we know that we can monitor it, appropriately. So now we're going to add it. Yeah, that's only helpful if your team knows about it. So as Kia said, just make sure everybody is properly trained and what their personal obligations are.
Yes. First of all, thank you both. Wanted to close with an overarching question to the group. Go into the chat here and answer this. How are you currently managing your compliance calendar? Are you doing it manually? Are you doing it with the support of technology? A little bit of both? What's that look like? And as you're answering that question, Kia, Kate, feel free to chime in. Like, what are you seeing? What are the best practices? How are folks using technology to their benefit here? Like, what's that look like in the real world?
With my clients, I see a lot how Kate said, what are you saying that you're going to do? Are you actually doing it? Looking at your actual policies and procedures, aligning your policies and procedures with your compliance calendar. I said I was going to do this every quarter. As your does your calendar show that you're doing this every quarter? Is it annual? Are you doing things monthly? It kind of alludes to everything that you're doing within your manual should reflect in that calendar by the dates.
Yeah. And as you do like an annual review, like work through your policies and procedures and find a way to track, like, okay, my policy says I am going to, perform this review every month and keep track of all of your monthly obligations. And that could be when you see, okay, I said I'm going to do 100 things every month. Is that realistic? Based on like your firm, the actual risks that your firm faces, the people that you have who can support you, on that mission. And maybe that's, when you have to tailor things a little bit more. This earlier, your policies and procedures are that living, breathing document. So you do have to be ready to tailor it. And that's not to say, do the bare minimum, but you need to know specifically what risks your firm faces and be ready to tackle those head on.
Yeah, I agree. It's not a one size fits all. Your compliance calendar shouldn't look like the other firms that you've been with or other firms in the industry. It's tailored specifically to your firm. So I think your compliance calendar should reflect that. I love that you mentioned just the risk element of it all. Some things are high risk, medium risk, and low risk. And if there's things that are no risk at all that just don't apply to you, that should be updated and reflected and possibly removed. You want this to be tailored to specifically to your firm.
Yes, absolutely. I definitely agree. And we should all be like doing our best to try and mitigate the risks that we face and yeah, working towards making everything like as low risk as possible. There's some things just, the nature of them will never be low risk. And that means that you need to be, addressing them on a much more frequent basis than some of those low risk items.
I think that's so funny that you said that because some risks are always going to be high. That just makes me jump up to like cybersecurity. It's always
Yeah.
medium high. So
Oh,
if you,
absolutely.
yeah, I'm like, that's a red flag if I see low risk for cybersecurity. So that's one of those things too.
Yes, absolutely. And yeah, especially like we hear about all sorts of different scams and how they evolve over time. Yeah, you may have a handle, but then up pops like a new cybersecurity risk. So totally agree with you on that. You can't really ever escape that type of risk.
Absolutely.
Well, Kia, Kate, again, thank you for the time today. Um, any last words for the audience here as we close this thing out?
Okay, train your team, train your firm, training.
Yes, yes. And, tackle those policies and procedures and make sure that they are up to date and you're saying what you're doing and you're doing what you're saying and bring in the experts when you need to.
Thank you all. Everybody in attendance, thank you for joining today. If you have any questions about today's session, feel free to email me at tlanning, that's TLANNING at comply.com, and I'll be happy to get back to you. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.